Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the scariest paranormal experience you've ever had? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Mine's tame compared to some of the stories here, but I went to school in Savannah, and my housemates and I had a ghost that we called Shem. He was a pretty chill ghost who'd close doors, turn on and off lights, the usual ghost stuff. All of us would just kind of go, "Thanks, Shern," or "Time to knock it off, Shern." However, whenever we would get back from winter or summer breaks, the doors would slam, glasses would be pushed off the counter, and other things would be moved violently. We learned after the second time that if we all apologized for leaving him alone for so long, he would go back to his normal shenanigans within a day. After we all moved out, and a friend of mine and his buddies moved in, I warned them all about Shern and his outbursts after breaks, and they laughed at me, until I got a call about the proper way to apologize to Shern a couple of months later. My mother has had a sixth sense since she was a kid, and can usually sense spirits around that others can't, and used to see them in her elementary years. When I was 16, we moved into a shady apartment in Dallas, Texas. I kept having sleep paralysis, but something was off. Usually when I have sleep paralysis, I don't see anything or lay there for a couple of minutes. When we moved there, I would see a shadow figure, and when it would look at me, I'd hear a loud, painful metal sound in my ears. The one I remember most was when I was sleeping on a couch and my parents' bedroom door was visible. When I woke up after seeing the figure, I looked over to my parents' room, wondering if I should wake my mom or not. They had the door open, and I saw the same darker than black figure look at me, then duck behind the door. The next morning, I said nothing to my mom about the shadow before, and she asked me in the car if I've had dark things happen. I said, "Why?" And she replied, "I sometimes feel something in that apartment, like all the negative things in the complex have been molding into one thing." Mine involved a chemical leak which caused an altered cognitive state and short-term memory issues. Me and my sister were in our grandparents' house, and we had forgotten they were still alive. Yeah, you read that right. My granddad was at work and my grandmom was pale, white, walking around the house. We called our parents 4 times. First time, we were scared, and our parents legit thought we were just wanting to come home because we hated it at our grandparents' house. The 4th time we called, we made no sense, and it actually scared our mom. We told her some random lady was in Mema's room, and that she was putting on her lipstick, talking about her first date with our granddad that night. What happened was, a less than scrupulous company in the 90s got in trouble for dumping toxic chemicals. A small amount had leaked out into the water table, so we were in Mima's house, scared out of our minds, because we were thinking they had died. They were very much alive and would not die for another 20 years. My grandmom was pasty white due to the effects her body had. By the time our parents arrived, me and my sister were outside in the driveway, scared, because we didn't know who each other was. No clue what happened to the company that dumped the chemicals. I was a kid when this happened, and my parents don't really know. They were never the kind to sue for damages. Scariest was when I was about 11 on a school camp. At night, our group was taken to the nearby lake to go fishing for eels. On the way back to our accommodation, we had to walk a dirt track that wound its way around the lake edge. My best friend and I ran ahead of the group and around a right bend, which was out of sight of the 20 kids and a handful of adults behind us. As we came around the bend, we both saw what can only be described as the most stereotypical ghost. A young girl in a white dress. She was entirely a whitish, bluish color, and slightly translucent. We screamed and ran back to the group, which was no more than 40 meters behind us. When we all eventually came to the same bend on the dirt track where we saw the girl, she was no longer there. Less scary experience was when I was at the headstone unveiling for a childhood friend of mine who had passed. She was 15 at the time, as was I. Many friends and family were there. Each of us was given a helium balloon to hold on to. We stood in a big circle, said a prayer, and on the count of 3, we all released our balloons up into the sky. The youngest person there was the cousin of my friend who passed. She was no older than 3 years old, perhaps younger. She didn't let her balloon go until 5 to 10 seconds after everyone else had. She eventually let go, but unlike all the other balloons that all swiftly rose into the air and floated off, the little one's balloon slowly rose a meter or two above head height and just hovered in place. Then, without changing its height at all, slowly began a full circle above the heads of the entire crowd of us. No one said a word. We all just watched, slightly perplexed. Once it did a complete circle, it rose up and drifted away. Perhaps just a coincidence, but it definitely felt like something more than that. This was months after my friend had passed, as it took a while for the headstone to be prepared. While the same friend was sick in the hospital, I never visited her. I was young and under the impression her condition would improve, and I was probably just scared to see her in her unwell state. When she passed, I felt immense guilt for not visiting her or getting to say goodbye. A couple nights later, she came to me in a dream. I profusely apologized about my lack of effort to see her. She told me not to worry, and everything was fine, and that she was okay. My first experience with death was at age 10 with my amazing aunt who helped raise me. I had etched in my mind how terrible she looked in the casket. Fast forward at age 19, I got off work, went grocery shopping around midnight. I looked down to the end of the aisle, and someone was very slowly pushing a cart full of cans of Bush's butter beans, the same type my aunt used to make me in an amazing casserole. I was fixated on the cart, and then saw my aunt pushing it, angelic and dressed in white, about 30 feet away. She turned my way smiling, and from behind me, I heard her voice whisper, "I'm okay now, and I love you." I ran out of the store and was freaked out for years. But that was only the beginning of many other experiences over the years that defied logic. I now consider myself fortunate with the ability to connect with others that have transitioned this life. Jeff. While looking for a place to move into as a kid in high school, we looked at a house that on paper was one of those head scratchers. Huge place that had dirt cheap. Joked on our way that it had to be haunted. First thing the realtor tells us as we step through, previous owner hung himself in the attic. So now we're all convinced, which might make the next part lose credibility due to confirmation bias. The basement was partially unfinished, with a literal well that was boarded up. The first bedroom we went into had my name drawn in crayon on the wall, and it looked like it was melting. Apparently the previous owner had a kid with the same name as me. When we went to go up to the attic, a huge gust of very chilly wind hit us as we opened the door. We ran out and told our parents we refused to live there. So it was nothing really paranormal, but spooked us enough. I still live in the town that this house is located. Place goes on the market every few years, with the new owners only staying a few months each time. Local paper has run a story on it, but none of the owners say anything was haunted, just that they had to move again for one reason or another. With no credibility at all, I proudly tell anyone that I am with when we drive by that house that it's super haunted. I think those people have their memories altered or something when they decide to leave. House wants to be left alone.
Well, paranormal experiences are in the eyes of the beholder, the people who beheld it. So again, lacking perspective, I appreciate everybody sharing. Not too much to add myself, but What type of topics do you guys enjoy or would like to hear more of from the channel? Talk to you soon.
A number of years ago, I did overnight security at a business complex in downtown Portland, Maine. What I'm about to tell you is creepy, not so much scary. I would usually do my nightly rounds around 2 a.m. The building had 10 floors, and I always took the stairwell. I had a key card on me, and when I would get up to the 8th floor, there were 2 sides, a west side and the east side. In between was a middle area, separating the 2 sides of the floor. In order to get from one side to the other, you had to use the key card to access. For instance, say you're on the west side of the floor. You use your key card on the panel, it clicks, and you're able to open the door to the middle area. Then you use your key card to access the east side of the floor. Again, use your key card, it clicks, and you're allowed in. I would always watch as the automatic doors would close on their own and lock. You could tell they would lock because of the click sound the doors would make. Then I would walk around on the floor, check the cubicles, kitchenettes, etc. Here's where it got creepy. When I would come back to the automatic doors, sometimes one door and even both doors would be open. Now these doors have alarms, and the only way that they can be physically opened is with a key card. To this day, I have no idea what was going on those floors. A friend of mine killed himself my sophomore year of uni. I went to a real hippie-ass school, and some of my friends knew she was going to do it, and instead of talking her out of it, went to visit her and say goodbye. Nobody told me she was even that bad or that any of that shit had happened until after it was all said and done. So anyway, the school ended up having a vigil for her, and I couldn't make it with work. Sucked to have to miss it, so when I got off my shift and came back to campus, I grabbed 2 beers and went out to the bench where they held the service. I cracked them both and poured one out for her, just kind of stood there for a minute and soaked it all in and then left. As I was walking back into the dorms, the lights in the parking lot turned off. Whack-as, and I was like, damn, what are the odds of that? So as I kept walking, then all the lights on the path back to the dorms turned off too. Then I was really spooked. When I got back to my dorm, the light above our patio was flickering. Weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life. Never believed in ghosts or the great beyond, but I have never been able to rationalize that besides pure coincidence. Odd stuff.
Another one that I had remembered, me-centric as well. This is a story my dad only told me back in October when we were looking at colleges. For some information, I couldn't talk until I was 4, and even then my vocabulary was limited. When I was very little, I had extremely bad nightmares. I couldn't sleep by myself without experiencing them. My dad told me when I was left alone to sleep, he would hear me screaming, "I'm burning! I'm burning!" Whenever my parents asked about it, I would tell them it felt like my skin was on fire, and just like a creepy little kid in a horror movie, I drew something. It was a very good drawing of a PT plane, the ones used for forest fires. In the background, there was a mountain and a forest on fire. Horrible news, there's more. Whenever we would watch TV shows with planes, I would be able to name stuff like cockpit and other parts of the plane. Once again, my vocab was very limited at the time, and my parents know the only books I touched were dinosaur books. When your dad is a devout Christian and your mom is an incredibly spiritual woman, you get a shit ton of theories about why their 4-year-old is experiencing this. My dad connected the dots with the plane information, the mentions of being burnt alive and the forest fire, and got the idea that this is somehow haunting me, specifically the spirit of a deceased firefighter pilot. The kicker? Just a few months after my conception, during a forest fire, a PT plane crashed upstate and killed everyone inside. That including the pilot. Want to know another funny thing? My top plan for my career is being a pilot. I'm also scared of fire. Spirit or not, it's a very strange experience both my parents kept a secret for 14 years. A house we rented a long time ago. I had an eerie feeling I was being watched from the first day we moved in. Things would go missing, the baby kept talking about the scary man upstairs. I heard things crashing in the kitchen, but nothing was out of place. The whole house had a dark energy. The whole family would often be hate-filled toward each other and argue a lot. We would go out to eat, and the hateful feelings were gone. One night, I heard someone knocking on the door. The door was glass and wood. There was nobody there. The knocking got louder and louder. My mom didn't believe me until she felt someone's hand across her mouth one night. The AC broke and the landlord refused to fix it in the middle of July. We moved. The new place was so light and happy. The baby wasn't scared to sleep in her room anymore. No more mention of this scary man. The landlord was into some metaphysical stuff. She was a self-proclaimed witch. She admitted to having done some rituals without closing the doors properly. She knew this before we moved in. She was weird and a bitch to boot. Was teaching and coaching at a really small rural school. Went in on a Saturday morning to work on basketball stuff. Was the only one at the school that day, but occasionally the custodians would come in randomly and clean. So I'm in my office, in the locker room, and I hear my last name called out clear as day. I even rolled my chair back to the door and yelled out, "Yeah?" Silence. Thought it was weird, so I got up and went to the other end of the locker room and nothing. I went up to the gym and all the lights are off. No one. I went outside and my car is the only one there. I went back inside and finished up what I was doing rather quickly. On Monday, I was talking to our counselor, who was also a coach and our main custodian, to see if anyone came in. They both said not to their knowledge. That's when the counselor tells the story of a PE teacher who was like 3 or 4 teachers before me, had a heart attack in the gym and died about 6 to 7 years prior. Since then, people had heard strange noises in the gym every so often. They then asked why I was asking, so I tell them the story, and they both got silent and just kinda shook their heads. Never heard anything else again the rest of the year, so I don't know. I already replied, but just remembered about the place I rented for a while. It was a flat apartment on the back of an old hotel, like Victorian-era place. I used to walk my dog out the back. There was a gate that led into the forest, New Forest, UK. It was a beautiful place, and being out in the middle of nowhere and in a new forest, we got our fair share of wildlife. In the winter, there were some nights walking out in those woods that just gave me the willies. Like nothing in particular was wrong. I wouldn't see anything, but I'd just feel on edge. Sometimes it would feel quiet, or the fog would make all the twisty old trees a bit freaky, but a couple of times were really bad. I always felt okay with Doggo around though. As skeptical as I am, I know they say animals go nuts whenever spooky things are going on, so as long as he was around and enjoying the walk, all was cool. I had a pretty strong torch, the type you can focus the beam on. I'd have some nights where it would be fine for the most part, except for random parts of the forest where the lights just seemed to not reach very far. I don't know how to describe it. It was as bright as ever. It just didn't penetrate. There was no fog in the air or anything, and stuff right in front of me would be lit up like sunlight, but at 10 meters or so I could barely see anything. 2 minutes later in another area, it would be fine, and I'd see like 20 to 30 meters in front easily. Anyway, the worst night ever. It was snowing. I was out with the dog. The snow was doing that insulative thing and making everything super quiet, and then I had the oppressive darkness type thing happen. Again, it was freaky, but at least Doggo is nearby. Then he just absolutely books it into the bushes, going, gone. I couldn't even hear him anymore. I'm alone in the silence, barely able to see more than 10 meters away. I've never felt fear like it. I don't even know what I was scared of, but I was just paralyzed. I didn't even call for the dog. Eventually Doggo came back and we went straight home. So yeah, nothing happened, but I've never been able to explain that weird darkness. Backstory. I have first cousins I grew up with that I was really close to. They were the exact same age and grade as my brother, who I were 2 years apart. So there were 4 of us together, all best friends. When we were young, their grandparents on the other side, not the ones we shared, moved in across the street from them. And that's the house that all this took place in. First story. When we were really young, me, my brother, and my 2 cousins all distinctly remember playing the exact same game. We all remember it the same way. We called it the shadowman game. My cousin's upstairs bedroom had a large window that faced their grandparents' house across the street, and we would sit on top of bunk of their bunk bed watching the front porch of the house that had a big brick column, and we would watch until the shadowman would peek out from behind the brick columns, and then we'd all hide underneath the covers. Again, we all distinctly remember playing the game, and all vividly remember legitimately seeing what looked like a shadow man pop his head and sometimes his full body out from behind this brick column and stare at us. To us, it wasn't scary or anything, like that's just something we thought was a fun game as kids. We were really young when we played this game. I'm guessing maybe 5 or 6. The next time I heard anything about the house was when we were in junior high. A lot of his other family members started talking openly about having experiences. This house was in Illinois, and my cousin's grandparents also had a house in Arizona and would always spend the winter there. When they were in Arizona, a lot of the kids and older grandkids would stay at the house intermittently. Here are some of the second-hand accounts I heard. The oldest cousin, who was in mid-20s, avid hunter, manly guy, not really the type to be scared by much, would always stay there. He would usually sleep in the grandparents' room. He was the first one to say there was some weird stuff going on in that house. He said at night, the TV in the bedroom would always turn on around 1 a.m. by itself. He heard a lot of footsteps and things moving, stuff like that. Then one night, he said he felt something sit on the bed next to him, and then intermittently hold him down where he couldn't speak or move throughout the night. In hindsight, sounds a lot like sleep paralysis, but that was the final straw for him, sleeping in the bedroom, and he only slept on the couch in the living room after that. One time, my cousin's aunt stayed in the house by herself and went to sleep, and when she woke up, there were tons of sticks and leaves all over the kitchen. She also heard a lot of footsteps and cabinets rattling. Another uncle stayed there once in the bedroom, which had a master bathroom. In the middle of the night, he heard what sounded like a gunshot in the bathroom and got up and ran to see what it was, and saw a bar of soap sliding down the wall like it had been flung against there. My cousin's dad was an avid non-believer and insisted the rest of the family was being ridiculous. He even admitted, though, that one time he had to go over there to grab something from their kitchen when nobody was home, and when he passed through the living room, the TV turned off by itself. We had to cross through the yard of the house to get from my cousin's house to the local pool we all swam at during the summer. One time, one of my friends said to my cousin, "Hey, I didn't know your out-of-town cousins were back in town," to which he responded, "They're not." And my other friend went on to tell us how when we passed through the yard that day, he saw a little girl watching us through the window. After hearing all the stories from family about the house, we thought it would be fun for all of us guys to go stay the night there for cousin's birthday when we were in 8th grade. This was the first time really being in the house, and we brought a camcorder and wanted to do the whole ghost hunt thing. Pretty chill for most of the night, but around midnight we had the camcorder off and put it away, and we were getting ready to go to sleep on the living room floor, but we're still kind of egging the ghost on a little bit. All of a sudden, there was just light banging sounds from all over the place. The floors, the ceilings, the walls, and it just slowly escalated until they were crazy loud. We all ran out of the house and did not return that night. We started going back again when we were in high school and had quite a few experiences. Here are some of those. Probably the craziest one was one night when we were walking around the house and heard what sounded like cabinets closing or opening on their own in the kitchen. We also heard what sounded like a rocking chair being moved across the carpet in one of the bedrooms. We'd all agreed before we went in that we wouldn't run out, we were going to try and let it play out. The big event of the night happened while we were all sitting in the living room around midnight. A small cabinet with glass doors just started shaking like crazy, and we all ran out to the front yard where we regrouped and decided we could go back in. We sat back down on the couch, and I said, if it is a ghost, it's probably laughing its butt off at us right now. We then immediately heard the loud laughter of a woman come from the kitchen right off the living room, and then it was just a mad scramble to the door, and we didn't go back that night neither. One experience that I had that I particularly didn't like was one night we were sitting in the living room. I was wearing a zip-up track jacket, and we're all a group decided to go hang out in the dining room for a bit. As I got up, somebody grabbed the back of my jacket and yanked down hard enough it got my back down to my butt on the seat. I thought it was one of my friends not wanting to be last in line, but when I turned around it was already last in line. It probably wasn't as scary as the laugh we heard, but it was extra unsettling being singled out. We also brought a couple of friends who were told the house they said they didn't believe in ghosts. We had one stay in the master bedroom by himself, and he only lasted about an hour before he came out saying he felt what felt like a hand grab his leg. He went back in again and came running out about another 20 minutes later, saying he saw a large shadow figure walk out of the master bathroom. He was the biggest ghost denier I'd ever met, and after like 2 hours in the house, he was admitting there was something up.